In a game about catching them all, the rare and powerful legendary Pokemon are easily some of the most enticing Pokemon to go after, sporting powerful moves, abilities, and at times, really absurd stats, to dominate whatever field they enter. But what happens when one of these powerhouses doesn't have an ability as the same caliber as its peers, or doesn't have the moves to fulfill the niche that it desires? Today, we're going to be looking into legendary and mythical Pokemon with bad abilities, or ones that I just think need buffs in general, as well as going over how I would adjust them as well as my reasoning. If you enjoy that kind of thing, make sure to like and subscribe, as I'm here twice a week, and with that, let's get into the video. But before we do that, I do want to lay down some ground rules before we get moving. First off, this video will be talking about these Pokemon viability, specifically in VGC, the official rule set of competitive Pokemon. However, if there's a prominent enough reason in a different format that also inspired the changes I made, I'll be sure to make note of that. And piggybacking off of that, the second rule is I'll only be talking about Pokemon that are legal or slated to become legal in Scarlet and Violet's Regulation J rules, meaning that we'll be factoring not just general viability, but also opportunity cost. This rule is really in place to describe why a Pokemon might not have a place in the current metagame, even if the Pokemon itself isn't necessarily bad. Like if somebody in the metagame does something that they do, but just strictly better, which is pretty common, shockingly. But with that out of the way, let's finally get into the buffs. Kyurem White is a Pokemon that most people look upon with great pity in VGC, and if you were to look at its stat line, you really wouldn't be able to tell why. The special attack it has is Gargantuan, it's base 170, and it's paired with a solid 95 speed and pretty decent bulk, so you would expect a Pokemon like this to at least be somewhat common, even if not dominant by today's standards. But the largest obstacle in its path to success lies in its ability, Mold Breaker. I'm just kidding, it's Turbo Blaze. But it's literally just Mold Breaker. Like, it's actually really annoying. Being able to ignore abilities is nice for a few Terra Grass, Flash Fire Pokemon out there. It's like Heatran and Ceruledge, and like sometimes Armarouge. But that feels a lot more like a nice side effect rather than the main reason you're playing this Pokemon, to click Blizzard. Being a special attacking Ice type, the one move that you almost always want to have in your pocket is Blizzard, being a powerful spread Ice type move that has a 30% chance to freeze on hit, but more importantly, can't miss when the snow effect is active. However, because of its current ability, it needs to rely on a support Pokemon to set it for him, which creates a glaring flaw in how you play it, being that you need a second Ice type on your team to make it usable in a snow team. Ice types are notorious for being horrendous defensively, only resisting itself, in exchange for really powerful offensive Pokemon. However, when you have two of these horrific ice Pokemon that are threatened by a stove burn that your mother wouldn't feel, actually, I feel bad kind of saying that. Mom shouldn't be, if your mom can't feel stove burns, give your mom a hug. Now, Terrestrialization does help your defensive play a ton, being able to become anything that isn't an ice type, but when you're constantly sacrificing your broken mechanic that could also be giving you a ton of damage or just strong cleanup in general, to play your team in a normal context, maybe that isn't the greatest thing in the world. Like, not at all. Like, it can't be the greatest thing in the world. To remedy this, there are two ways that I think you could go about it. You could give it Snow Warning, which I'd say is the most obvious option here, given what I had just spoken about. And on top of all the aforementioned offensive benefits, being an Ice type in the snow gives you a pretty sizable 50% defense boost. Paired with its already decent bulk and potential Aurora Veil from partner Ninetales and now potentially Iron Bundle, since it doesn't need Ninetales to set the snow, this thing could become a snow powerhouse, threatening every type that would resist one of its coverage with another one, creating a scary deadlock in Ice, Dragon, and Fire, being fused with Reshiram. Which funnily enough leads us into our second potential route, where we update Turbo Blaze by making it give an additional 50% boost to its fire type moves. I've had a similar change in mind with Kyurem Black, who I won't be including in this video, but I think for Kyurem White specifically this could be a massive change, especially considering it could already play in Sun Hybrid teams, using powerful Fusion Flare and Heat Wave as fire moves to decimate opponents. Actually, quick pause here. I'm going to take a quick pause here. I do want to say, I just had to look into this because Heat Wave sounded a little bit crazy to me and I didn't think I had seen anybody play it. And I'm looking at it now, it doesn't get Heat Wave. I didn't know it didn't get Heat Wave. It felt so natural saying it, I just kind of assumed that it did, which is totally on me. But I will be adding that to the buffs list. This thing should definitely get Heat Wave if it were to get this change. With the additional 50% boost to emulate Stab, or same type attack boost, it'd practically have a third offensive typing, and one that would benefit greatly from what is currently the best field effect in the game, Sun. especially in the team building department, where instead of playing a second eyesight, you could use another powerful restricted Pokemon such as Groudon and Koraidon to set the sun for you, and have Kyurem come in as a powerful fire type cleanup, fire in pretty heavy quotations, but you get the point. Because of this additional sun synergy this rework would give him, Chi-Yu would also undoubtedly become one of its best partners. But with meta special attackers, when isn't Chi-Yu a good partner? It's like having a grilled cheese sandwich with no cheese when you're not a rain team. Like, I feel like you could just kind of slap it on, it would do anything. But I digress. With that said, I think either of those changes to its ability would work, and I think that's kind of the biggest hole in its kit. But with a lack of direction, it's just clearly hurting it, and it's really already in pain from being a spliced amalgamation. But what do I know? So just, I give it no warning or something, please. Up next, we have a very wet horse, and one that I'm actually really sad to have to include in this video because this is probably my favorite mythical. Keldeo. Keldeo is a water fighting type. And if you know about water fighting types and you know about VGC, you're already doing the speed phase. It's already worse than Urshifu just for being a water fighting type. It's really sad. I'm okay, let me just stop talking. I'm already making myself upset. It also falls into the fast special attacker role with what was once a pretty high base speed of 108 and a pretty middling special attack of 129 considering its restricted status, comparing to someone like Kyogre who sets his own rain for a 50% damage boost to his water moves while also having a higher base special attack by more than 20 points. Kyurem had a few issues, but unlike Kyurem, whose ability at least had an argument for why it could be useful, Keldeo's ability quite literally runs antithetical to anything he would want to do. Justified boosts the attack of the wielder by one stage when it's hit by a Dark-type move. If you're familiar with competitive Pokemon in any capacity, you know exactly why it's useless. It's a special attacker, which means it gains no benefit from the attack boost on most of its standard sets. And second, it resists Dark-type moves. There is no reason, there's no incentive to ever click a Dark-type move into the Keldeo ever. In singles, it means that clicking knockoff into a Keldeo switch could at least create a somewhat frightening position, but you're still giving up your item since it's not immune to Dark-type moves, which is not really worth the attack boost more often than not, because you're losing your Scarf or your Life Orb or any other form of item that you would have. With that said, because it's a water type, we can still make it an offensive rain piece, meaning that it could still be decently powerful with rain up, right? Well, yes, but with a slight issue. Keldeo's water moves all have some sort of drawback. Outside of Surf, its water options on the special side are either inaccurate or extremely weak, having lost Scald and the Great Scald removal of Sword and Shield. So we'll go ahead and look at him. He's looking at us with the sad puppy eyes. We're going to give him Scald. Because I think Scald, not even just Scald, just a consistent water move in general. Scald is really broken because of the burn chance, but it doesn't need the burn chance to do what it would need to do. It really just needs to be able to hit a water move and rain with its decent special attack stat. With all that said, every other rain-based mon carries Swift Swim. Like every offensive piece that you could think of, like Basculegion, or like literally Barraskewda, Ludicolo, anything that wants to be offensive under rain wants Swift Swim. So you're pretty much going to be looking at guaranteed Swift Swim, and it feels really easy to do. I think I want to go something for more unique though in the place of the new ability, just because of how common Swift Swim ends up being. Thematically, the Swords of Justice all carry the Justified ability as a thematic mesh, and the idea that they stand above evil. I think that we could definitely give Keldeo a similar type of ability, but giving it a special attack boost instead of the physical one. Bane of All Evil is what I ended up came up with the name being a work in progress. It's an ability that redirects all type moves to the user, absorbs them, and gives them a special attack boost, similarly to Lightning Rod. This gives Keldeo a pretty strong niche of being able to deny and automatically redirect the often potent dark type moves that the format are known for, especially from Chien-Pao and Brute Bonnet who threaten very powerful sucker punches. For the sake of balance, I was really unsure whether or not to make the redirects... For the sake of balance, I wasn't sure whether or not to make it redirect status moves of Dark type, like Parting Shot and Taunt, but I figured that actually makes a lot of counterplay into more status move reliant mons a lot more challenging, and I feel like a lot of people wouldn't use Keldeo offensively if that were the case, so I decided against it. To be honest with you, Keldeo's niche as an offensive water type is already so over and done with Urshifu pretty much having the trophy. Thank you, Unseen Fist. It's still, I don't know why it still does that, but I do think the task of buffing Keldeo ends up being pretty difficult because you want to maintain the theme of the Swords of Justice while giving Keldeo an adequate power boost, and I don't think I got it right with this one, to be honest with you. Let me know what you guys would do for Keldeo in the comments. Would you give it a new ability altogether, or would you use an existing ability? I honestly think Hydration could have been pretty good too, but I really wasn't sure, so you guys let me know. Finally, we have Mewtwo, who's probably one of the biggest victims of power creep and bag theft the world has ever seen in Pokemon. Not having only one, but two separate Pokemon that do the exact thing it wants to do but largely better, which is clicking Expanding Force. And evidently, it's due to the Gen 1 physical special split. When you look at its stats, it seems solid across the board, which it is, but it invests a lot of points in the physical attack, which it's never going to be using if it's not Mega Evolved into Mega Mewtwo X. Otherwise, the physical attack points do nothing but hold it back, in fact actively working against it, as it not only could have been redistributed into special attacker speed, but it also serves to make Foul Play significantly stronger into Mewtwo than it would into several other special attackers, being weak to the move as is. For comparison, when you look at Calyrex Shadow, who posts a ludicrous 150 base speed, with a 165 special attack, and special attack Moxie, by the way, with the same access to Expanding Force, by the way, it takes Mewtwo's niche that Mewtwo needs as a crutch and just completely takes it as its own, and not even relying on Expanding Force as itself to show you the gap between Mewtwo and Calyrex's power. The only real advantage that Mewtwo really has over Calyrex Shadow is actually its coverage moves, being that that genetic Pokemon that's spliced from Mew, obviously, it has a bunch of random coverage moves of almost every type that you can think of. And I do think that that could be something that we could work with. By reallocating 20 of its attack points to speed, we have a Mon that's just as fast as Calyrex Shadow Rider, but even with that, Mewtwo's ability choices don't really lend itself well to using its coverage moves to its advantage, with Pressure being pretty much useless in VGC, as matches are too short for it to be relevant, and Unnerve is solid, but it's half of the big horse's better Mewtwo ability already. With that in mind, though, I had a few options, with Old Protean actually being the biggest standout for me. Protean actually got a really big nerf this generation, only changing the user's type the first time the Pokemon enters the field, which forces them to switch to get the bonus back on a different type. With older Protean, however, it would change the user's type at any point in the match, meaning that it could be used as strong offensive augmentation, letting it hit mons that don't normally care about Expanding Force like Incineroar, as well as being clever defensive play, being able to change your type to adapt to the field's conditions. With these changes, I don't think Mewtwo would still be super meta, but I think it creates a much needed differentiation between itself, Calyrex Shadow Rider, and now Deoxys Attack and Regulation J, also letting Expanding Force. But with all that being said, these are the buffs I decided to give to who I think are the weirdest legendary and mythical Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. I do think that there are a couple of Pokemon that could probably use some more work, but I think these are probably the biggest standouts for me, because I feel like they're the closest to being something pretty cool, and they only really need that small nudge to really get going. But with all that, I'm here twice a week, and if you watch all the way through, I really appreciate it. I would hope that you like and subscribe. Actually, please do. It helps me out a lot. And I'm here twice a week. But with that, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.